You're watching Africa Live. Thank you for joining us. I'm Penina Karibe in Nairobi. Look at what else is coming up this half hour. A helping hand, Chinese doctors making a difference in Cameroon. And crucial weekend clashes as African teams battle to secure coveted World Cup berths. The United Nations Security Council's rejection of an African Union-sponsored proposal to defer the International Criminal Court trials against Kenya's president and deputy president has sparked a diplomatic storm. African nations represented at the council reacted with fury to the rebuff, terming it a deliberate humiliation of the continent. CCTV's UN correspondent Stephen Fee has more.
Let it be written today in history that the Security Council failed Kenya and Africa on this issue.
Powerful words from Rwanda's UN envoy, sponsor of the resolution to defer trials for Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy William Ruto for 1 year. 7 countries voted in favor of the measure, including permanent members China and Russia, as well as the African states that sit on the 15-member body.
What they've been asking for is that the popularly elected leaders of Kenya be accorded the most basic respect. In matters involving African peace, security and stability, African countries are the one who knows about their needs the best.
But it wasn't enough. The resolution needed 9 votes to be approved. 7 of the 8 members who abstained are party to the ICC, including France.
The choice has been made to move forward hastily, and we certainly don't understand why. This is useless and is fraught with risks that we would like to avoid.
Following the September Nairobi shopping mall attack by the al-Qaeda-linked group Al-Shabaab, in which 67 civilians died, Kenya claimed the ICC trials would jeopardize regional peace and security.
Sadly, for some in this council, the heartbreaking loss of lives and scores of shattered bodies at Westgate Mall does not meet an unspecified imaginary threshold for Article 16.
Under Article 16 of the treaty that established the court, the Security Council has the ability to delay ICC trials for 12 months.
So the idea of Article 16 in the UN, in the Rome Statute, was essentially to allow for the possibility of when justice attempts were in some way a threat to the peace, that the UN Security Council would be able to postpone for a year and that would be renewable. But the idea is really that that was would be in exceptional circumstances.
ICC member states are expected to meet in the coming days to alleviate some of Kenya's concerns. Deputy President Ruto's trial began earlier this fall, but after 3 delays, President Kenyatta's proceedings won't begin until February. Stephen Fee, CCTV, New York.
Right, so let's get more perspective on this issue. Ambassador Boaz Mbaya, an international relations expert and executive director at the Center for Policy Analysis, is live with us here in studio. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So obviously the Kenyan and AU representatives are quite furious with this decision of the UN Security Council. They're terming it a continental humiliation and betrayal. Are they justified to refer to it as such?
I don't know about justification, but the matter of the fact is that AU collectively as a body is not a party to the Rome Statute, so they actually have no local standard basically, but they're supporting a member country of the AU itself, namely Kenya. I think, in my opinion, the reasons for going to the Security Council are all faulty. Perhaps we should have argued about the transition in Kenya, the difficult phase we are facing in terms of constitutional implementation, and why the president and deputy president will be required in Kenya, rather than the reasons that the AU gave.
Right. So then you would say that perhaps that is where the AU and Kenya maybe went wrong in this bid?
I think they knew all along it was not going to succeed, but it is not bad politics to be mischievous sometimes, and I think that's what the AU was. I just don't understand why Kenya played ball, because I think the best route for Kenya to take is to approach the matter through the court itself. And the president's lawyers are doing a pretty good job of it. In fact, earning extension, postponement until February. So I don't see why we are backtracking in that process. No.
Right. Yeah. But there were, looking at the vote itself, there were 8 council members who actually abstained. And one would wonder, why abstain? Why not just vote outrightly no?
That's a very interesting point. abstention in international voting system is a very positive outcome of anything. In other words, when a country abstains from a vote for whatever reasons, it maintains friendship both ends. And therefore, it is saying no or a yes
in a diplomatic manner.
In a diplomatic manner. And I don't think that is unusual. No.
Right.
Yes.
So then what are the avenues now that the Kenya and the AU can explore after what the UN Security Council has done?
The AU undertook to hold another summit after the vote had been taken. We are waiting to see what decision they'll take, but I really don't see what decision they're going to take other than leave the president and deputy president continue with the cases. And if I were to be asked, I think that is the best option, because dragging the matter maintains Kenya's relations on the spot. Internationally, it is not good for the country, it's not good for the president, it's not good for the deputy president. So I think the sooner the matter is finished with, the better for us as a country.
But then again, I know you said that abstaining for the 8 members was perhaps a way of trying to avoid, friction between them and Africa. But then again, when you look at the reaction of the AU representatives, they're really angry about it. So what does this do then for Africa's relations, with those members? That
was bound to happen. If they had won, there would have been celebrations all over. So it's a natural reaction for failing to secure the deferral they sought. But I don't think in diplomacy that is the end of the story. They are going to work out things behind the scenes, and you realize that diplomacy continues as normally.
Right.
Yes.
All right, let's leave it there for now. Thank you very much for those insights. We had here in studio Ambassador Boaz Mbaya, an international relations expert and executive director at the Center for Policy Analysis. The Libyan Prime Minister Ali Zaidan has demanded that all militias, without exception, leave Tripoli after at least 27 people died and hundreds wounded in gun battles between Libyan militiamen and armed residents in the Libyan capital on Friday. CCTV's Maria Galang with that story.
What started off as a peaceful protest quickly turned bloody. Violence erupted when gunmen fired at hundreds of demonstrators carrying white flags from inside villas in the southern Tripoli district of Gargour, where the Misrata militia has its headquarters. The shooting sparked a violent response in which armed men assaulted the villas and set them on fire. Libya's state news agency says more than 20 protesters have been killed, with over 130 more wounded in the attack.
They started shooting, 4 are injured till now. This is the blood of Libyans. I said to the General National Congress, you traitors, where's the army? Where's the police?
The march in the capital, Tripoli, by thousands of protesters was the biggest show of public anger at militias in months. Since the 2011 fall of Muammar Gaddafi, hundreds of militias have run out of control in Libya, carving out zones of power, defying state authority, and often engaging in violence. The government at a news conference called for a ceasefire.
The departure of militias from Tripoli is a command that is not up for discussion. It is a necessary and urgent demand.
The rebels who overthrew Gaddafi were hailed as heroes for bringing an end to more than 4 decades of his rule. But many have rejected government demands to turn in their weapons or join the national security forces, posing a constant threat to the stability of post-Gaddafi Libya. Maria Galang, CCTV.
You're watching Africa Live. Let's take a break straight ahead. Nature's fury, Somalia's Johor region battles devastating floods. And a helping hand, Chinese doctors making a difference in Cameroon.
UN-backed Congolese forces have finally driven out General Sultani Makenga and his M23 rebels, ending a bloody civil war in the eastern Congo.
The M23 says it has done what it was asked to do, and now the international community must push for a peace deal.
Can peace finally come to this vast African country? We answer that question this week in Talk Africa.
Floods and conflict have displaced more than 4,000 people in Somalia's town of Johar, 45 miles north of the capital, Mogadishu. The African Union peacekeepers who liberated the town from Al-Shabaab find it hard to offer security, treatment and makeshift camps for the people worst hit by the floods. Worst affected are women and children. Some doctors now tend to the sick and children susceptible to diseases. This humanitarian crisis was, however, overshadowed by the cyclone that hit northern Somalia early this week, killing over 100 people. The African Union force, however, describes the disaster at Johar as enormous and urgent intervention measures are needed.
The urgent need is, one of all, feeding of these people. Secondly, shelter. We need shelter. Thirdly, medication. Those are the crucial requirements that we need. And this has been a situation that befell us without preparation. But I think the three, as I mentioned, are the crucial one. One, Medicare. Two, shelter and food.
South Africa's army, which has boots on the ground in several African countries, says it's satisfied with its state of combat readiness despite facing economic challenges. This was said by the Army's top brass at a media briefing which coincided with South African Army's annual flagship training exercise at Lehotla in Northern Cape Province.
Firepower and military might. Exercise Saboka is a training exercise which the South African Army uses to practice, test and show off its mobile, conventional capability. It's a scenario based on an intervention force fighting a fictitious enemy and involves over 3,000 soldiers from 13 units of the Army. Some of the forces, which had been doing integration training for more than 10 days, put on a firepower demonstration and mechanized attack to show the South African Army's state of combat readiness. The Chief of the Army, General Vusi Masondo, said force preparation was the main focus of the Army, and he praised his unit commanders for the excellent way they had looked after the country's military equipment and personnel despite serious budgetary constraints.
Yeah, we continue to be challenged in terms of our budget. But looking on the positive side of that, it requires us to be more innovative. For instance, we have launched a campaign of equipment awareness, where our soldiers have to learn to take care of the equipment that we have, because we realize that there's a lot of pressure on the national budget, and that money is not going to easily come our direction.
South African soldiers, including those who have been deployed in peacekeeping and other missions on the African continent, have all undergone the Saboka conventional training exercise since it was implemented in 1996.
I think what is important that we must understand is that the government imperative is that the Army must always be combat ready to execute the task has been given by the government to protect this country, whether inside or outside the borders. So this exercise demonstrates the capability that the Army do have to protect this country.
And next year's exercise Saboka is likely to be bigger and bolder, as the South African Army celebrates 20 years of its country's hard-won liberation. Renadal Calm, CCTV, Lehotla, in South Africa's Northern Cape Province.
In other news making headlines, Boko Haram is holding a French priest who was kidnapped in northern Cameroon early this week, a source within the banned Nigerian Islamist group said on Friday. The source added that George Vandenbush is in the hands of Mujahideen, an Arabic word which means fighters, who carried out the operation that was coordinated with Ansaru. Ansaru is an offshoot of the militant group and has previously claimed kidnappings of foreign nationals. Gabon has suspended classes in public schools from Friday until further notice due to a teachers' strike, with students marching in solidarity. The teachers have been on strike for the past 4 weeks. They are demanding a pay rise and back pay which is owed to them. The education system in the country is badly underfunded. And hundreds of Tunisian protesters took to the streets on Friday to demand the release of detainees who they say were arrested by security forces over false charges. The protest was organized by the radical Islamist group Ansar al-Sharia. The group's supporters filled the streets of Sidi Bouzid waving Ansar al-Sharia flags and shouting slogans demanding an end to torture and arrests. And like in Libya and Yemen, where Islamist fighters control swathes of territory, Ansar al-Sharia appears a far more limited challenge to the state. To West Africa now, the State Health Service in Cameroon is struggling to cope. For every 10,000 people, just 2 doctors are available. But a small team of doctors from China has been making a big difference. CCTV's Maria Galang has more.
Yaoundé, a bustling capital of 2.5 million people, and home to the biggest hospital in the region that specializes in gynecology, obstetrics and pediatrics. It's here that teams of Chinese medical specialists are helping, part of a medical cooperation program dating back 50 years that now reaches across the continent. Teams have been working in Cameroon for 38 years. Their skills are desperately needed.
The hospital was built and equipped by the Chinese government. So in terms of our working relationship, we have a hospital where Chinese and Cameroonian expertise is put at the fore with one team made up of the people from both countries, but working to make sure that the health of the mother and child in this institution is at its best.
Caesarean sections, cleft palate operations and over 6,000 successful births this year puts this hospital as the top choice for women and children in Yaoundé.
The hospital's outpatient center. Hundreds of patients a day wait to see the doctors for consultations on anything from family planning to antenatal care. But a different approach to medicine at the hospital is fast becoming popular among patients. Acupuncture. With word of its positive effects spreading fast, the treatment rooms are usually filled with patients, most of them with muscle-related problems.
It has a lot to do with the weather in Cameroon. It's hot and very humid. There's generally some rain every day, which results in conditions such as arthritis and rheumatism.
Paulette Du has been studying traditional Chinese medicine for the past 2 years. Having visited China 3 times to perfect her acupuncture expertise, she is determined to make sure patients keep coming back.
I learned here with doctors. I also went to China to learn acupuncture.
John Manumbo lost feeling on the right side of his face after a car accident. This is his 5th visit to the clinic, and he's happy with the results.
I had a non-sensitive area on this, the right part of my face, so after 3 times, it starts to be sensitive, and till now it's going better and better.
This is Dr. Hao's 5th year working in Africa, her 3rd in Cameroon. In this time, she has overcome language barriers and lack of equipment.
Many aged Cameroon patients call me Mama. I feel that they say it out of respect and also out of gratitude. So in return, I call them Mama as well. We respect each other.
For the medical team stationed here in Yaoundé, their goal is to ensure every day at work is spent changing someone's life for the better.
We bear in mind what President Xi said in Congo-Brazzaville, to fully dedicate ourselves to the local healthcare despite all the challenges. Love is borderless.
Maria Galang, CCTV, Yaoundé, Cameroon.
And you're watching Africa Live. Another break, and shortly after that. Crucial weekend clashes as African teams battle to secure coveted World Cup berths.
George Muregu alikuwa amenisnatch a necklace. Kukusana yeye nikamshika, nikampa discipline kidogo, alafu nikamuuliza kaza akataka kuchange that life, adapt another new life.
The driving force in George was the anger to achieve.
For him, taekwondo was life. He looked at the sport and he knew he could make it.
He is growing up very fast. In Kenya is #1.
Hapo nilicheza ile yangu yote yenye nilifundishwa na George, ile yangu yote.